Hi everyone, Darby here. I haven't made a video for a while, so I thought I'd try and make one that would be helpful to the majority of players out there. I'm going to do another video on navigation. Now, I've done a video on navigation before, but that was really for people navigating around with head trackers, and it focused on using Curious Gambler's flight planning app, which is still fantastic. Everything I said in that video still applies, but I know a lot of people now are flying with VR, and you don't want to have to lift up your goggles, look down at your navigation notes while you're playing in VR, because obviously it ruins the immersion. So I'm going to teach you a way how to navigate around maps that don't have GPS icons while you are using VR, and it's a way that you can do it without having to lift your goggles up at all. Now, ironically, I'm making this video using my head tracker just so I can record what's going on screen without having the split vision that you get with VR when you're recording screen capture. So here we are, we're on one of the combat box servers. There's no GPS icons on here. I've just selected the Allied side for no particular reason, and I'm going to fly out of Antwerp, and we're going to navigate somewhere. We'll fly to one of the enemy objectives and then fly back to this airfield here, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce that name because I'll just look like a tit. Right, let's navigate to Tilburg. So we're going to fly from Antwerp to Tilburg. We'll take a Spitfire. I will go through the setup, and I will show you how I would plan this sortie and how to find my way there. We're not too fussed about the fighting side of things. This is purely focusing on navigation. Let's take the Aussie skin. Beautiful. Okay, Antwerp, Spitfire Mark 9, let's go. Okay, so here we are in the aeroplane. First thing I'll do is begin the start sequence. So hit E and just crack the throttle there. Then I'm going to pull up the map while my aeroplane's starting. And it's really important to bring up a scale that is relevant to the flight you're about to do. So there's no point in having the map to a scale like that because we're flying from Antwerp up to Tilburg here, and it's just too small for me to see anything. And I don't want to be screwing around with this when I'm trying to fly the plane. Likewise, I don't want to zoom in too close because I'm going to fly off the edge of the map in no time. So what you want to do is set a sensible scale that allows you to see your flight path and pick up the features on the ground. So I reckon that looks pretty good. We'll just do a quick review on the IL-2 Sternberg map. So obviously it's laid out logically with north being up, south being down, to the left is west, and to the right is east. All the features on the ground are exactly as you will see them when you're flying. So all these rivers are in fact there with all these roads. Unlike real life, everything is as it is on the map, which is fantastic. And also each of these grids is 10 kilometers across, and that's about it. Right, so it looks like our plane has started up, so let's quickly plan where we're going. Right, flying from Antwerp to Tilburg, first thing we want is a heading. So to me, knowing that that is north, that is east, so this is 360, that is 090, it's halfway in between roughly, which looks like to me 045. So I'm going to use a heading initially of 045 to get to Tilburg. As you get more experience, you'll find it easier and easier to judge headings, but I'm just visualizing a big compass over the top of Antwerp, the airfield where I am, and I'm just trying to visualize a rough heading. So to me that looks like 045. Okay, great, so we've got our heading, and because we're not going to allow for wind, heading equals our track. So our track to Tilburg and our heading 045. Next piece of information we need to know is the distance. So I'm just simply, it doesn't have to be exact, you can do this in your head in a few seconds. I'm just going to count the number of squares between me and Tilburg. So it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's roughly 50 kilometers. Okay, so now we've got our heading and we've got our distance. 045 and 50 kilometers. The next thing I need to know is how many kilometers per minute my aeroplane's going to be traveling. Now with the Spitfire it's a little trickier. If you're flying a Russian or German aeroplane, you've got an airspeed indicator that's already in kilometers. Now with the Spitfire, it's in statute miles an hour, right? And I know that my Spitfire is going to be cruising at 280 statute miles an hour. I need to get that into kilometres an hour. So what I do is I multiply the miles per hour by 1.65. So I know my Spitfire is going to cruise at roughly 280 miles an hour. If I multiply that by 1.65, it's going to give me 460. So I'm actually doing 460 kilometers per hour in the cruise in the Spitfire. This sounds complicated, but really it's not. If you have a favorite aeroplane like Mustang or Kitty Hawk or whatever that's in statute miles an hour, just have a look at how fast it goes in the cruise and then multiply that by 1.65, and that will convert it to kilometers. So now that I know I'm traveling at 460 kilometers per hour, I need to know how many kilometers per minute my aircraft is traveling at. So I divide 460 by 60, and it gives me 8 roughly. Okay, so because I'm doing 460 kilometers per hour, to get that into minutes, I divide it by 60. Okay, so I'm going to call it 8. So going back to the map, I know I've got 50 kilometers to travel to Tilburg on my heading of 045, and dividing 50 by 8 will give me the time it takes to get there. So 50 divided by 8 is roughly 6 minutes. Okay, so that's all the information I need to do this flight. Now I know I've made it sound horrendously complicated, but really it isn't. All you need to know is, you know your heading, which we've figured out, you know how far you've got to go, and when you figured out how far you've got to go, you divide that by how many kilometers per minute your airplane happens to fly, and that'll tell you how long it takes to get there. And that will enable us to use the clock, which in the Spitfire is in the bottom left down there. So let's take off and see whether or not I'm full of shit or whether or not this works, and we'll see what happens. Let's see if I can find the runway. So my previous nav video, as I said, everything in that video still stands. It's perfectly okay. There was a work cycle in there, TTSN, which standard for track, time, self-brief, and next event. And we're still going to use that here. You don't actually need to rigidly adhere to it, but initially when you're starting out navigating, you might want to just run through those 4 items just to make sure that you are ticking all the boxes that you need to tick and that you don't get lost. So we'll run through those when we take off. Now remember I said our first heading's going to be a 045. If you want to be really accurate, you'll set course overhead the airfield, but most of you I know can't be bothered doing that, and you don't need to do that. So we'll just take off. And it looks like our runway heading here is about 300. So we'll make a right turn onto our heading of 045. Remember I said it's going to take us 6 minutes to get to Tilburg. Okay, we'll rotate there. Gear up, right turn. So I'm going to turn on to 045, set course. And I said it was going to take us 6 minutes to get there. So this is the bit where we look at our clock. Look where the minute hand is. Now it's sort of hard to read, but that looks like it's 5 minutes past the hour. So the time is 05, and it's going to take us, I said, 6 minutes to get there. So we should be there at about 11 minutes past the hour. Now bearing in mind, I planned on us flying at 280 miles an hour, and because we've had to take off and accelerate, it's going to take us a little longer than that. So if I had 6 minutes to 5 minutes past the hour, that gives me 11. So I said we're going to be there at 11 minutes past the hour, but because I'm going to allow just a minute for acceleration. Okay, so that means we should be at Tilburg at 12 minutes past the hour. What I'll do is I'll level off here. So I said 045, that's near enough. Auto level, fall back to cruise power settings, which is from memory, I think it's 2650 RPM plus 5 boost. Near enough to me, everything's in the green, and I'll pull up the map again. So we've just taken off, we've set course 045, flying up to Tilburg. What I do is I use my mouse pointer as a pseudo GPS icon. So we've taken off, we're about here right now. So we've set our track of 045. I know it says 046 to 047, but that's near enough. Time, we've already spoken about that ad nauseum. So we're expecting to be at Tilburg at 12 minutes past the hour. Self-brief, so this is where we just have a think about what we're going to see en route. So really there's not a hell of a lot we're going to see. It's basically just sort of empty scrubland. As we get closer we'll see 3 towns probably. We want the town that's on the right, so 1, 2, 3. We want the rightmost town. Halfway along we might see this industrial area off to our right. But for now we're about here, so that's where I'm going to leave the mouse pointer. And this is where, when you're flying on a multiplayer server, you don't want to be looking down at the map all the time, right? That's the beauty of using this technique. We've done the hard work on the ground. We know it's heading of 045. We know what time we're going to be there. So until the clock says about 11 minutes past, we don't have to worry about anything except looking outside looking for bandits. As you can see, our airspeed I planned at 280 miles an hour, we're actually doing 270. So it was probably a good idea that I added a minute onto our time earlier for the acceleration taking off, because we're not going quite as fast as I thought, but that's okay. So being a good fighter pilot, I am keeping a good lookout. Okay, so we're crossing a canal. We'll have a quick look at our map, make sure that's not completely unexpected. Okay, so we're crossing this canal here now. We've been flying for, what is it now, about 3 minutes. So we've done about 24 kilometres roughly, and that makes sense. There's about 2 and a bit grid squares there. So we're crossing this canal. So I'm just going to update with my mouse where we are. So we're here right now. So next event will be at time 1-2, 12 minutes past the hour. We should be at our objective at Tilburg there. Now once we get to Tilburg, we'll plan our route home using the exact same method. We'll do it a little bit quicker next time. I'll do it sort of in kind of in real time as I would if I wasn't having to explain everything. And we're going to navigate ourselves back to this airfield here, whose name I will not pronounce, because I look like a complete chimp. Okay, so here we are. It is 10 minutes past the hour. I said it would be 12 minutes past the hour. We'll be at Tilburg up here, so we must be around about here somewhere. Let's start having a bit of a look out to see what we can see. Okay, I can see a town up to my right 1 o'clock there. I've got another town with an airfield below me there, so that must be Gills. So Tilburg is the one off to my right. So here we go. And I'll be interested to see just how accurate my timing was. Now bearing in mind I haven't been flying as fast as I planned. I'm 10 miles an hour out, but it shouldn't make a huge difference because we're only giving rough estimates of when we should be where we should be. So I'm convinced this is Tilburg, directly to my front. Okay, I can see the canal running left to right across the screen there, which is this canal here. I've got another canal feeding in from the right, which is this canal here, and the defences should be on the right hand edge of the town. So there's the town down there, so the defences should be basically where my gun sight is now. We'll fly around those. I'm not going to attack. The whole purpose of this sortie was just to navigate. And we'll fly our way back to Woensdrecht. I think that's how you say it, but I'm probably wrong. Okay, so there's the defences down there. Alright, so now from here, let's say we've just bombed that target and we want to get home. So first thing we do, figure out the track. Okay, Tilburg to Woensdrecht. It's basically west, but slightly south. I reckon that's about 20 degrees off. I'm going to call it heading 250. Distance, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. It's 50 kilometers, same speed as before. We're going 8 kilometers per minute, so it'll take us 6 minutes to get there. Okay, so heading 250 for 6 minutes. Turning right overhead here. Taking flag. So we're all out heading 250. That's about it there. I said it would be 6 minutes to get there. So looking at the clock, what's the time now? It's about time 1:04. Time 1:04. The big hand is 14 minutes past the hour. I said it will take us 6 minutes to get home, so at time 20 we should be home. In fact, I'm going to add a minute on. Oh no, I'm doing 280 now. I won't add a minute on. We'll call it 6 minutes on a heading of 250, and I should be back at the airfield that begins with the letter W. So I'm about here right now. That's where I'll leave the mouse pointer. Okay, so now I've got my heading, I've got my time. I can focus on looking outside, and I don't need to pull up the map or try and figure out where I am until the minute hand on my clock is at time 20, or just before. We're at a flat range, I'll level out. Okay, so that town off to my right, it's got a distinctive airfield to its north. It's obviously Gills, which means we're about here. So that's where I'm going to leave my mouse pointer. It's really good to update your position with a mouse pointer if you get into a dogfight or you're unsure of your position. If you've left your mouse pointer on your last known location, it just makes it a lot easier to orientate yourself. The other thing we can talk about now is two far features. So you can see I'm flying towards this airfield here. There's these giant lakes further to the west. Right, so I know that no matter what happens, if I hit two big lakes, or two big estuaries, I guess you could call them, I know I've gone too far. So even if I'm sloppy with my timing, I lose track of the clock for whatever reason, perhaps I'm chasing someone or I'm trying to get away from somebody, I know as soon as I've hit these big water features, I've gone too far. So I sort of mentally went through track time, self-brief and next event. Obviously we've set our track 250 time, I've already been through that already. Time 20 we'll be back at home. Self-brief, well I've had a look at it, and as I mentioned earlier, if I hit these two lakes I've gone too far. There's not a hell of a lot else for me to see. I might be able to see these towns off to my north as I progress, but right now we must be about here somewhere. Yep, there's the town off to my north with the canal or the river running through it, which is here, so I'm in this position here right now. Next event really from here is just going to be me getting home. It's quite a short leg, and as I said, there's not many big features on this route, so my next event is simply being overhead the airfield. In fact, I'm going to call it Airfield Bravo 79, it's a lot easier to pronounce than the real name. Don't know if I mentioned it earlier, there's no need to fly rigidly straight and level. In fact, that's a really good way to get killed if you're on a multiplayer server. As long as you're holding roughly the heading that you planned, you shouldn't be too far wrong. Obviously flying on this map is relatively easy. If you're flying on any winter map, navigation becomes a lot more tricky, and you can't rely on seeing rivers and water features quite so much because they're all frozen over. I find I rely more on towns and coastlines to be able to navigate. Towns certainly show up really easily on the winter maps, but yeah, the water features not so much. Okay, so I can see up ahead here there's a whole bunch of water, so I know that somewhere between here and that water is where I'm heading. I'm on basically my heading of 250 right now. Just pulling up the map. Well, I know there's this sort of, I don't know what you call it, causeway or landmass between these two lakes, and my airfield that I'm navigating towards, Bravo 79, is basically lined up with this landmass. So it should have some water to the right, water to the left, and my the place where I'm going is right in the mid-center here where the land is. So looking ahead there, obviously my clock still says that we've got, what, about 2 minutes to go, but I can see that landmass in between the two bodies of water. It's right where my gun sight is now. So I know that Bravo 79 must be somewhere directly in front of me. Can't quite make it out yet. Maybe if I zoom in. I think that's it down there, where my gun sight is now, but it hasn't rendered properly. Anyway, as I said, I've still got a minute to go before I should be there. And that was only a rough guess anyway. So notice how much time I spend looking outside the aeroplane instead of looking down at my map and stressing out about where I am. So I'm using the clock and the mouse pointer like a GPS. Okay, let's have a look then. Yep, that is definitely the airfield down there. I can see the buildings and the revetments. So what does my clock say? Yep, it's just coming up on time 2:1 now. So that was almost bang on. Obviously I'm not quite there yet, but it's good enough for government work, as they say, and I've certainly found my way back. So guys, that's navigation in a nutshell. All you need to do, you need to figure out how many kilometres per minute your aircraft flies at, because the map you'll be using is in kilometres. Once you've worked out how many kilometres per minute you're travelling at, and you've worked out a heading and a distance, it's easy to work out how long it's going to take you to get somewhere. And if you've got the time it's going to take you to get somewhere and an accurate heading, that's all you need to find your way around the map. So I hope this is being helpful. Hopefully it hasn't, I hope it hasn't just been a suck egg session. I do a lot of flying in real life, and this is exactly the technique that I use in real life, and I'm sure that most other VFR pilots use in real life to find their way around. It's dead easy, and with practice you will get good at it, and it'll almost be impossible for you to get lost flying in IL-2 Sternberg.